showing them that we can provision an environment, 0 to everything in 15 minutes.
Look at that. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. Okay, so thank you very much for the very kind introduction, James. As James mentioned, my name is Adam, and I have the distinct pleasure of working on a product called Deskbeers. As James mentioned, Deskbeers began as a side project of a company called Mint Digital back in November 2013 was the first commit to the repo. It's a pretty simple premise. We just wanted to deliver craft beer to offices, one office in particular, which was our office. And from there, it kind of got a little bit out of hand. After a year, we decided we had a pretty decent business. Everything was going in the right direction. We'd built and proven an MVP in that very lean startup fashion. So we had landing pages where you could register your email address. We didn't build any kind of functional software for a very long time. And we were doing things like delivering beer ourselves in transit vans and racking up all sorts of traffic violations on the streets of London. We stopped doing that and outsourced the delivery of the beer when we got more customers. And then we quickly ramped up to around 100-ish customers, which was pretty cool. Those customers were bringing in a decent amount of money, not enough to say that we were breaking even, but certainly enough to give us the indication that this was a real going concern. But probably more than all of that, in the decision to turn Deskbeers into a company in its own right, we had a clear roadmap, a laundry list of features that we really wanted to get done, and we could really see the potential in it. We had a lot of ambition for where we could see Deskbeers going. So at that point, we decided to spin out. So I should say the company that Deskbeers started at, Mint Digital, has a bit of a history of this kind of venturing. Notable past products include Stickygram, which allowed customers to print their Instagram photographs on fridge magnets, and then a joint venture with a cake company called Boomph that allowed people to print their Instagram photographs on marshmallows. So you can see that Deskbeers really is a logical continuation of that theme. So yeah, in March 2015, we raised a little over £120,000 on a website called Crowdcube from just shy of 200 investors, and we were off to the races. 2nd of March 2015 was our first day of trading, so that was pretty cool. So that's kind of what I want to say on the genesis of the spinning out Deskbeers. What happened next, I think, is really interesting. So we've raised this money, we've got a finite amount of cash in the bank, and we've run the numbers, and we reckon that with that we can get to profitability with 2 full-time members of staff. So remember, over the last sort of 18 months, Mint has designed and developed and marketed this initial product to the state that it's at, and we reckon we can now take that and run with it. Thus begins Operation Don't Go Broke. So we've got a limited amount of cash, we've got a limited amount of things that we can do, and so efficiency now becomes the name of the game. And when you're 2 people trying to get things done, the thing that we need to be doing is automating as much as possible, offloading things onto the computer. Computers are really great at doing a specific class of task. That's something that's really well defined and easily repeatable. They're also really great at doing exactly what you tell them to, including shooting yourself in the foot like 2,000 times a second. So given that to be the case, how do we make sure we get it right? When we're offloading these tasks onto the computer, how do we make sure that we're not going to be causing mistakes that propagate through the system and cause untold pain? Well, when we do this, we follow a process. We do the work manually. We understand what sucks and why it's painful to do. We look for those patterns that we can write down as like clear instructions. And then once we've understood that, what those patterns are, then we can write the code. So let's take an example. So Deskbeers, we buy a lot of beer. We generally work about a week or so ahead of ourselves, and we get beer delivered to our partner courier company in East London. We deal with loads of different breweries, mostly in London, but from the Welsh Valleys to the Scottish Highlands, everywhere in between, some big, some small, some here, I think, some not. And we deal with loads of different quantities. Some breweries will put 60 cases of 3 types of beer on a pallet and send it overnight to a warehouse, and it'll get offloaded with a forklift. Some will turn up with a few cases in the back of a transit van, and 2 guys from the brewery will deliver it that way. Lots of different ways of, lots of different suppliers doing things very differently, a very disparate supply base, and when we have that much differentiation, things don't go always according to plan. For example, someone might deliver to our office address rather than our warehouse, and at that point we have to explain to reception why there are 1,500 bottles of beer in the lobby. Always fun. Someone might, drop half a pallet of beer off of a forklift truck when unloading it. That's always fun. So for many and varied reasons, when we don't have enough of the beer that we want to send out this week, we need to make sure that everybody gets not only a box of beer, but a box of beer that they haven't seen before. We don't want to send anyone a duplicate box of beer. So that's our overarching goal for what I'm about to talk about. So if we've got any beer in stock, we can send that to new customers first. So anyone that's just signed up to the service has never seen any beer before, so we can send them whatever we've got, right? It's all good stuff, so they'll be happy. If that still hasn't solved the problem, then we need to start thinking about maybe pinching beer from next week to send to our regular customers. Deskbeers subscribers can get beer every 1, 2, or 4 weeks, and it's those weekly customers that will have seen everything that we've got in stock. So we need to start pinching from next week in order to satisfy those orders. And then the 2 and the 4 week ones, we may or may not be able to give them something that we already had boxed up, depending on the circumstances, what they've seen. And every week we deal with some version of this. It may or may not be because of mistakes in ordering, delivering, something like that. For umpteen untold reasons, we end up trying to match who gets what based on what we've got. And we can generally solve it the same way. All of these issues can generally boil down to the same process, and that is the potential boxes that we could send a customer are the boxes that we've got in stock, less any that we've already sent to that customer. And more than that, the best box that we can send to a customer is the first box where in the first in, first out system, where we've got enough of that quantity to satisfy the order. So if you're ordering 5 boxes and we've only got 4 of them, then we can't send you that, we have to send you something else. And this is a formula that can be written down in code and run automatically. Great, so we're getting somewhere. We're getting to something that we can start to think about automating. And when we start thinking about automating something, a little voice goes off in my head, and it's Kent Beck, who says this: for each desired change, make the change easy. Warning, this might be hard. Then make the easy change. So Kent is talking about refactoring software at this point, but I think this really applies to any kind of big systems thinking. And so the goal of what we're about to do is to get ourselves to a point whereby solving the box picking problem is an easy thing to do. So to do that, we're going to need a few things. We're going to need to teach Deskbeers the concept of a box. Until now, it's gotten this far in its life without actually knowing anything about what it actually delivers. It knows a lot about recurring billing, it knows about orders, it knows about the quantity of something that's being delivered, bottles in this case, but it doesn't actually have any notion of a box of beer. So that box, we need to teach it about that box, and we need to teach it that we can apply that box to an order. So we need to be able to say, this type of box of beer goes with this customer. The nice thing about that is that we then start building up a history of the beer that we've sent to a customer, which we can start doing some interesting things with later. The box needs to know about the beers that are inside it. We need to know how many of them we've got, so we don't try and send beer that we've run out of. And we need to know how long we've had them. So we use the expiration date of the beer as a proxy for how long we've had it. Presumably, beer that we buy this month goes out of date sooner than beer that we buy next month. And once we've got all of those pieces in place, we can do something like this. Now, this may or may not look scary, but essentially, this is the box picking algorithm as lifted from the code base in Deskbeers, more or less. And yeah, so we can see we've got the the formula that we initially described at the top, the potential boxes are the boxes in stock less the customer's history. Boxes in stock here is a convenience method that loops over the database and finds any boxes of which we've got some quantity of, so good. And then the customer history similarly just loops over the past orders for a customer and returns a list of boxes that we've sent them. And then from that, we can get rid of, the next bit of like code is, all that's doing is getting rid of any that don't have enough quantity to satisfy the order. And then we pick the first box as ordered by expiration date. Fantastic. And then the last bit is, if we've picked a box, then we'll update the order with that box and decrement the quantity appropriately. So I hope that even if you're not technical, this is pretty understandable, it's pretty reasonable, and I think it solves that problem quite nicely and is quite easy. Creating that notion of boxes, even a naive stock management system like the one we ended up with, and what's tantamount to a content management system for beer. There's three kind of quite distinct tasks, quite big jobs in and of themselves, but when we had them in place, creating that box picking algorithm was easy. And then, so in order to make that easy change, we had to really understand the problem. We had to find a level of abstraction that we were confident makes sense. What we didn't do was, as I initially described the solution to the problem, if customer is new, send existing beer, else if customer is old, send new beer. We came up with something that was much broader than that. And I think this is another quote from a hero of mine, Sandy Metz. Again, she's talking about writing code, but I think it applies to this systems thinking as well. It's like the wrong abstraction is far more damaging than no abstraction at all. It's much better for us to sit there and suffer through the pain, like with spreadsheets trying to work out who should get which box, until we're confident in that abstraction, than to write the wrong bit of code that then goes and propagates an error through hundreds of orders, and we have to then painstakingly unpick them all and find out where we went wrong and all the rest of it. The result is we now have a pretty simple, extendable, robust system for future development. We've created a seam in the Deskbeers application where we can start injecting this notion of box picking logic. And at that seam, we can start doing really interesting things. Stuff like preferences, send me more lager, send me less stouts, maybe. I'd like to opt out of sour beers. Those people are wrong, but fair enough, whatever. We could do things like ask customers to rate the beer they've had. Quite a simple interaction, but then starts enabling some quite interesting things. Customers that like beers that you liked also like these beers, for example, so maybe you get those next. That paves the way for like machine learning, AI. Can we do something really smart with like ordering beer? I don't know. The point being that there's now somewhere in Deskbeers where we can do these cool things around the idea of picking a box of beer for a customer. And the way we got there was by following the process. We did the work, we spotted the pattern, and we wrote the code. And it's this process of automating things that really is our job. It's what makes Deskbeers a viable business. We've got 2 full-time employees, and I think that means that I think the term is capital efficient. Like it's a very lean operation. And more than that, when the business is ticking over without us having to drive it so manually, it gives us time to do other things. It means that we can provide excellent customer service. It's a big goal of what we're doing is to make sure that everyone gets not only great beer, but with really great service. And it is a hard job, but somebody's got to go out and trial that beer, right? Like, woe is me. But yeah, going out and finding really good beer is an important part of what we're doing. I really like developing new features. As we learn more about our customers and what they want, we improve our product and offer new things, which is the constant evolution of like product market fit or something. And we raised a bunch of money from a bunch of investors, and those investors expect to see a return on that investment. And the way we do that is by growing the business, and the way we do that is by acquiring new customers. Like, this is a really crucial part of what we're doing. That we wouldn't be able to do if we were having to wrestle with spreadsheets every 5 minutes. So what are the other things that we can automate? Well, stuff like booking deliveries is a big one. At the moment, I'd say this is semi-automated. It involves a lot of CSV generation and file uploads and FTP servers and things like that. I'd really love to see a really nice and tight integration with the courier companies that we use to facilitate that kind of, well, it means that we don't have to do things like generate files, really. Notifying customers is a big one, again, sort of related to integrating with courier systems. If we can get you a notification, say your beer's been packed up, it's been put on a van, it's been signed for by James at reception. Not only does that build a bit of excitement and facilitate that great experience, but it means that we removes the need for people to contact us for support, things like that. So it takes another thing off of our plate. Something like ordering supplies is an interesting one. So every box of beer that we send out goes out in a branded Deskbeers box. And those boxes we buy in bulk and they take a couple of weeks to turn around. So presumably at some point we'll have sent out so many boxes and we'll have so many left that we can then fire off an email at that point to the box people who can then get a resupply in before we run out of the boxes that we've got. And I never have to think about ordering boxes again. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And really, anything else that we spend our time doing, anything that we can find that pattern, anything that we can reduce to a well-defined set of instructions that we can give a computer, we can and should do. And the way we do that is by doing the work, spotting the pattern, and then writing the code. At this point, writing the code is the easy bit, right? Cheers.